Still not 100% sure why this race is called the Eifel Grand Prix, but oh well. Hello, my name is Alex Does F1 Stuff, and welcome back to a pre-race review for round number 11 of the 2020 Formula 1 season around the Eifel Grand Prix, around the circuit of the Nürburgring. Didn't quite make sense, but I'll roll with that. So it is the first time we are returning to the Nürburgring in 7 years. Outside of the current turbo hybrid era, so honestly this track is basically brand new to these current cars. It's going to be like going to Imola, Mugello, Portimao. There is going to be no data for this track whatsoever. So it's going to be quite interesting to see what kind of stuff people can gather. Yes, some of the current drivers have driven around it before, but experience doesn't always mean a great deal when it's basically a track that the cars have never been around before. But with that being said, let's just quickly go over the championships of where we have left off so far. Lewis Hamilton 44 points in front of Valtteri Bottas after his victory in Russia, who is then 33 points clear of Max Verstappen, who then has a worldy gap to one of the closest midfield fights of the year so far, or of the past few years so far. We've got Lando Norris on 65 points, Alex Albon 64, Daniel Ricciardo 63, and then we have a jumble of everybody else just below. And in the constructors, it is much the same. Mercedes miles out in front, I think 166 points. Like, it's done. The constructors is definitely done. The drivers, honestly, I don't know if Bottas can pull his finger out and actually start taking points off of Hamilton. Maybe, just maybe, we could have a close championship fight at the end. And then, honestly, the fight for third. That is exciting. But if we just quickly go over the weather for this weekend. On the Friday, 70% chance of rain and 12 degrees across the whole day. So that is extremely cold and a high percent chance of rain. And then Saturday, even colder. About a 40% chance of rain, so it's possible that it may not. And then Sunday, for race day, even colder still. And then 50% chance of rain. So my god, if it rains, we are going to be in for one hell of a race. And also extremely cold temperatures, so getting those tyres up to temperature is going to be a massive factor. So perhaps Mercedes' DAS system may help them in qualifying, warming up those front tyres compared to everybody else. And speaking of the tyres, Pirelli are bringing the C2, C3 and C4 compounds. In hindsight, I suppose they may have brought the softest compounds, the C3, 4 and 5, as it is so cold, as you don't really want to bring harder rubber to a cold circuit, as they're just not going to warm up in the slightest and you're not going to have any grip whatsoever. But it is an interesting tyre selection, and if it does rain, we may see the use of all 5 compounds, you never know. But with that little prelude to the Eifel Grand Prix out of the way, let's jump on in to Mercedes, and we start with Valtteri Bottas. Honestly, things seem to be going his way so far. He had a decent performance in Russia, granted not the qualifying he was after, but he did say that he wasn't too fussed at the end of it, as it actually ultimately helped him, especially with Hamilton's Q2 blunder by not having a lap set after that red flag. So hopefully he's now had a bit of momentum shift happened. I've seen him on his Instagram. He's been driving the what are they called? The team that Hamilton's just got. Extreme E, the rally car. He's been driving some of that. He's been cycling a lot. He's been at home working out and things like that. So hopefully his mindset has changed and he's going to come back a little bit harder. He needs to outperform Hamilton this Grand Prix, and then hopefully it should swing back in his favour. And talking about Lewis Hamilton, he is up next. Now is definitely the time to match Schumacher's record in Germany on German home soil at the famous Nürburgring circuit to match 91 victories. Honestly, Hamilton has probably got the most pressure he has ever had on him so far for a Formula 1 season. He has all of these records. He has the 7 championships to equal. He has the victories to equal. He's then got the pressure, the external pressure of the whole Black Lives Matter movement. On top of him, he's got everything else that he's pushing outside of Formula 1, as well as everything inside of Formula 1. And genuinely, it is one of the most the heaviest pressure that he's been under I kind of lost myself in that. But basically, he's just under immense pressure this year, and he's handling it extremely well. Like we saw in 2016, when Nico Rosberg would end up being slightly better over the weekend, Hamilton would just come out in the race and win. He would then bugger off and do some fashion show or go skydiving or whatever, and Rosberg would go off to some mountains to see a monk to clear his head, and then Hamilton would turn up the next weekend and win. It's kind of that sort of thing, but perhaps he's under a little bit more pressure than people realise. And with that, we move to Red Bull, and Alex Albon starts us off this time. He had a bit of a crap race last time, didn't he, in Russia. It wasn't the best race at all for him, and he really needs to start performing. He's just had that one-off. He's had that one-off podium when Max wasn't there in Mugello, when, admittedly, like a third of the grid wasn't there. It's still a podium. A podium is a podium, just not a podium on pure pace. But ultimately, though, I do feel like his seat is secured for next year, alongside Max Verstappen. Now, if it is raining, if it rains, it is going to be the best battle so far between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. To see, arguably, out of this grid, out of these 20 drivers, the two best wet weather racers go at it against each other in two of the best cars on the grid as well. Like, what more could we want? What more could we possibly ask for? Literally nothing. It's the two best drivers in the rain, in two of the best cars, battling out for the victory. That is going to be bonkers. And to Racing Point, the third team on my list, Sergio Perez has had a bit of an iffy year. He's no longer got a drive for Racing Point for next year, so he is now advertising himself, he's promoting himself, trying to show his good performances so far. And that's basically all I've written down for Sergio Perez. He should do better this time round, knowing he's out of a drive. And he should be trying to get hold of one, no matter, even if it's a step backwards, even if it's going to Haas or to, I don't know, there's not really many other places he can go other than Haas, which we'll move on to in a little bit. But if we get on to the second driver, Lance Stroll, he's having an outstanding season. Like, honestly, he's turned it around. People are still saying that he's the daddy's boy and he's just got lots of money, but he's actually a solid driver. He's having a decent season this year. But we do need to see whether those Racing Point upgrades are actually good, as we didn't get a chance to in Russia, as Leclerc punted him into the wall. And next up we have Renault, the team of the uprise so far. The team of the uprise? That didn't make any sense at all. The team on the rise. The team on the rise is definitely Renault. Daniel Ricciardo may just be regretting his move from Renault to McLaren, but honestly, who knows? A podium is possible if it rains and it's a hectic race, as Daniel Ricciardo will be the driver to take advantage of any sort of condition possible. But Esteban Ocon, though, I am surprised at the season that he's having. Honestly, I was expecting him to be a lot closer to Ricciardo than he is. He's having a sort of season that Albon is to Verstappen, albeit a little bit less than that. He is a little bit closer to Ricciardo, and he has outperformed him in the races so far. You can go check out my two latest videos that I've done assessing each driver's qualifying and race performances so far against their teammates, and then ranked them at the very end. But honestly, Ocon does need to step up the pace just a little bit. And then we move to Ferrari, and Charles Leclerc is honestly dragging absolutely everything he can out of that dog shit car that they call a Ferrari. And I feel like he's going to do exactly that in Germany. I don't think he's going to get a podium. I think he's going to struggle to get into Q3. Maybe if it is raining on the Saturday, that could throw up something, especially if it is a changeable conditions rain. We're not 100% sure on that. Or if it's raining throughout, he might just possibly get in, as the car's advantage is definitely slightly nullified when it is just tipping it down with rain. As for Sebastian Vettel, though, this is definitely the race that he will want to perform. He's come out on the Formula 1 podcast, I can't remember what it's called now, but he said that he's failed with Ferrari. He's failed in his dream of winning the championship with Ferrari, but knowing that he's now at his home Grand Prix once again, unexpectedly at his home Grand Prix, as he wasn't going to be there officially this year. But Sebastian Vettel does have a drive, so perhaps now his mood may just increase, even though that even though Ferrari is still being a little bit sour, and possibly they must still be sour at each other, but that must give him a little bit more confidence knowing he has a drive, and definitely a drive for a decent team next year. And then we've got AlphaTauri. Now, Pierre Gasly is having one of the best seasons of his career, and again, like Sergio Perez, he is advertising the crap out of himself, and he needs to. He needs to get out of the Red Bull family, because he's not going to move up. He won't move back up. That's not going to happen, because they're not going to do that again. They're not going to re-swap Albon with Gasly. That just won't happen. And as they're moving away from Honda again, it's a bit unfortunate that that is happening. I've made a separate video about the Honda pulling out of Formula 1 as well. But Gasly really needs to start looking elsewhere, or stay with Toro Rosso or AlphaTauri, as he's not going to go up to Red Bull, but then there's nowhere else for him to go, so he has to stay here, but he really needs to start looking and get it in early for 2022. As for Danny Kvyat, one of the most surprising drivers so far of this season, in my video that I made comparing each driver's race pace to each other, Danny Kvyat is actually on an extremely similar pace level to Pierre Gasly. It's just unfortunate that the results don't show it, that he hasn't had those decent results, those powerful drives through the field. His only real one so far has been Russia just gone, but he should really take this fight to Gasly and actually compete. Ultimately though, I do feel his seat is up for grabs, maybe for Tsunoda, but with Honda pulling out, I'm not sure if he's now lost his backing, not too sure. And then we get to one of the juicier teams of today's episode, Alfa Romeo. And we start with Antonio Giovinazzi, as he had a decent race. He had a decent race in Russia, 11th place in all of the madness. Well, I say madness, there wasn't really mad, was it? But still, 11th place, not too bad. But he has had 2 seasons now. This is his 2nd season, and he just hasn't performed. He's not been there. Wait, is it his 3rd season? It can't be his 3rd season, because he did 2 races in 17. Was he there in 18 as well with Leclerc, or was somebody else in he must have been in 18 with Leclerc, and then he was in 19 with Raikkonen, and now 20 with Raikkonen as well. Oh shoot. Okay, so he's had 3 seasons. Wow, okay. Well, I personally feel that Antonio Giovinazzi is on the way out this year, as he's just not performed. He's not on the level of Kimi Raikkonen, and he's in his 40s. He's just not having any of those decent results. He's not showing any racing prowess or any racing craft like Charles Leclerc was when he was at Sauber, and he's definitely going to be on his way out. And who will be filling his shoes? I reckon it will be Mick Schumacher, simply because of the namesake, and then perhaps with a team that we'll move on into a little bit, we'll see one of the other Ferrari juniors come in. And speaking of Kimi Raikkonen, he had a bit of a doozy in Russia, but again, his overall season has been far better than Antonio Giovinazzi's so far. He's been consistently there, maybe not necessarily scoring points, as that car isn't always points scoring potential, but he's always been there and always shown much better racecraft and much better just general everything really. But I suppose that comes with being literally the most experienced driver in F1 history. And then we have Haas, another team that is a little bit exciting for today's episode. Magnussen having a very decent season and definitely extracting everything he possibly can out of that car. He's got a point to his name, but that's about it. This time round in Germany, I'm not 100% sure how well the Haas car will perform, but if we move to Romain Grosjean, a driver that is having a dreadful season, like a awful season. He's scored no points, he's not even been close to the points, he's had some DNFs, not as many as Magnussen, I'll admit. Magnussen has had 4 DNFs so far, but definitely Grosjean is having a bit of a doozy season. And I feel Grosjean is on the way out, and again another one of the Ferrari juniors will come up. Whether that's Eilert or whether that's Schwartzman, I'm not 100% sure. And then penultimately, we've got McLaren. Now, McLaren seemed really strong at the start of the season, whereas Renault, I'm comparing them to Renault here, didn't seem really strong. I would say they have now swapped. They have now firmly swapped. McLaren has dropped off the pace and Renault has picked up the pace, which is a shame, as we like to see McLaren's resurgence through the sport, but then equally it's nice to see Renault's final resurgence coming through after they end up changing their name next year to Alpine. But definitely to see McLaren now struggling after such a decent start to the season, it's a bit disappointing, but I feel Nürburgring is just a chance for them to turn that around. And then we've also got Carlos Sainz. Now, lots of people are, I don't know, trolling, I suppose is the right word. Trolling his move to Ferrari. Now you can see why, as 2021 Ferrari isn't going to be great. They're going to be much the same as this year, struggling to get some podiums and possibly getting into Q3 every now and then. But I feel it's more 2022 that they're going to be looking for. When it's all equal, it's all, well, I say equal as F1 has ever been in terms of car performance. So I feel that's what he's really aiming for. And 2021 is just going to be getting used to the car and used to the team. So I still feel like it's a decent move, but definitely he's going to miss out on some good results in 2021, having left McLaren, who are going to have that Mercedes engine in a decent chassis as well. And then finally we've got Williams. Now George Russell is having an exceptional year and unfortunately staying with Williams once again for 2021. Now he still needs to continue to have a decent year in 2021, otherwise I feel he will be lost. Like Esteban Ocon, he'll be lost from Mercedes' radar. Now I feel there is a little bit of a master plan at stroke here. So hear me out for this one. Lewis Hamilton, 6-time Formula 1 world champion at the moment, on the verge of becoming the statistical king of the Formula 1 castle. 2021, he's not yet signed a deal, but I feel like he will just sign a 1-year deal. He will then win again, presumably, in 2021 as the cars are much the same and he's still going to have that advantage over Bottas. He will then literally be the statistical king of the castle, 8 world championships and probably 100 plus victories. He will then retire. Because he's been in the sport for, at that point, 14, 15 years, 8 championships. What's the point in continuing? There isn't. So that will then leave a space at Mercedes. Bottas is only on a 1-year deal for 2021. And now after that, Mercedes will not renew Bottas's contract after 2021. And for 2022, they will have George Russell. And as Lewis Hamilton will have retired, they will then extract Max Verstappen. He will execute one of his exit clauses in his Red Bull contract and fill that Mercedes seat. So I do feel George Russell's future in Formula 1 is secured up until his 2022 move to Mercedes. But he just has to keep performing, otherwise Mercedes will lose sight of him. They'll do what they've done to Esteban Ocon, they'll loan him out to someone else and then he'll just get lost and take a gap year out of the sport and come back with a different team and have literally no affiliations whatsoever to Mercedes. And then finally we've got Nicholas Latifi. A bit of a disappointing year, I must say. I was expecting a little bit more from him considering his career in F2 so far, but yeah, I'm not sure. He's again signed a deal for 2021, but I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. And that is the end of my pre-race review for the Eifel Grand Prix. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next episode with whatever and whenever I decide to make it. I'll see you guys then.